So Google Ideas' Twitter account tweeted out this photograph, and it was, well, received exactly as you'd expect. Because it didn't take people long to spot the Borg Queen, Kaiser Soze, and Unicron. The only question really is, what happened to Skeletor and what are they all doing at Google Ideas? In fact, no, let's back up. What is Google Ideas? Apparently, Google Ideas is a think tank specifically dedicated to supporting free expression while fighting harassment. According to the website, Google Ideas is a team of engineers, researchers, and geopolitical experts who build products to support free expression and access to information, especially in repressive societies. We focus on the problems faced by people who live in unstable, isolated, or oppressive environments, including billions of people who are coming online for the first time. So why the hell would they want to hear from a bunch of first world professional victims? But Google Ideas clearly knew who they were getting in bed with. There was no deception by omission. There was nothing left out of the narrative about these people when approaching whoever it was that was dealing with them, I'm sure. So an hour later, Google Ideas tweeted, "The replies to our last tweet are precisely why we're exploring ways to combat online harassment." In the best Kafka trap you can imagine. So go on, Google. Let's see exactly what the terrible problem was. From Name Redacted. What a bunch of uglies. Yuck. Name Redacted. Kill yourself, Google. Doesn't even make any sense. Name Redacted. They should kill themselves. Finally, we get to something that, while it's not a death threat, it's not very nice, is it? I think it's safe to presume that these were the 3 nastiest tweets they could find. Yes, 3 nasty tweets. I think it's just worth remembering that Google Ideas claim to be a team of engineers, researchers, and geopolitical experts who build products to support free expression and access to information, especially in repressive societies. We focus on the problems faced by billions of people who live in unstable, isolated, or oppressive environments. I guess nasty words on the Twitter count. I mean, I'm not saying it's anything to do with first world problems, but it's everything to do with first world problems. What really amused me about this is that, as we said, Google Ideas clearly knew everything about the people that they were inviting to speak, which is why when Milo wrote an article called "Google Ideas Invites Online Harassers to Talk About Online Harassment," everything about that title was absolutely true. But as we already said, I mean, Google Ideas knew about that, right? I mean, they must have known that Randy Harper is well documented for sending relentless mobs of abusers after her critics. For one of them, for simply doing his job as a debt collector, because Randy happened to owe money. And it's not just Randy, it's her supporters as well, who are quite happy to dox and dogpile and God knows whatever else, various people who happen to get in Randy's way. Randy was even gracious enough to give us an example of why she's the sort of person you probably don't want to deal with in regards to this event. She decided to go on Twitter and accuse Derek Smart, who spoke against Gamergate at the SPJ, who was allegedly flirty as fuck over the phone with her, which, again, it's not kind of harassment, it's not anything that Derek has done wrong, and frankly, I doubt that it's even true. And I'm not saying this because if I personally found Randy Harper had washed up on a beach, I'd be looking for a stick of dynamite.
Bits of whale rain across the beach. Then the pieces reach the crowd.
I'm saying it because Derek Smart categorically denies it, and claims to have no particular reason to need to flirt with Randy Harper. And having seen the evidence, I'm inclined to agree with him. But it didn't stop there. Randy then said that Derek had texted her Google Voice number a fucking letter threatening me. A letter Randy posts which begins, "Hiya, saw some tweets from you," that is clearly simply critical of Randy and her actions. However, Derek Smart was taking none of her shit, threatened legal action, and suggests that Google Ideas should make someone over there take a closer look at an example of what they've championed. But you know what, let's continue to do it for Google. So next up is Zoe Quinn. The very honest young lady who cheated on her boyfriend at least 5 times and then repeatedly lied to him about it, who then promised that she'd never lie again, and when all of this finally went to some kind of court, managed to get and enforce a gag order on the man she had emotionally abused because she had, quote, set up Google alerts to monitor his online activity, which means if he references her anywhere online, that constitutes contacting her. Yes, someone that sociopathic actually exists. And this is just in addition to everything else she's done, such as bombarding the fine young capitalist feminist game design project with accusatory tweets and then DDoSing them. Actually, no, sorry, I don't know that she was responsible for instigating the DDoS attack. It just looks that way. We know, though, that she was reveling in it as it happened. As you can imagine, after learning about what terrible scum she was actually dealing with, the Google Ideas employee who had instigated all of this distanced herself from the online abusers she had cooperated with. Izzy Zahorian, a designer and researcher for Google Ideas, whose Twitter bio says she is thinking about how to make the web a safer and more inclusive space, recently removed a number of retweets from attendees Randy Harper and Zoe Quinn. An archive of her timeline from 1 day ago reveals a number of tweets from both individuals, but at a glance at the same timeline today shows those retweets have been unretweeted. The internet is serious business, don't you know? This is, again, the same Randy Harper who, 1 day before the Google Ideas event, had boasted about destroying men for sport. What a kind-hearted person. Also present was a journalist who helped trigger the high-profile public shaming of comet scientist Dr. Matt Taylor. You know, Shirtgate. You know, the guy who was bullied so badly by progressives of the internet for wearing the wrong shirt that he broke down in tears on a Google Hangout when trying to apologize. But according to Anita Sarkeesian, online harassment is a real concern. She says, you come to expect it. As a woman writer, particularly if you're political, you come to expect the vitriol, the insults, the death threats. After a while, the emails and tweets and comments containing graphic fantasies of how and where and with what kitchen implements certain pseudonymous people would like to rape you cease to be shocking and become merely a daily or weekly annoyance. Something to phone your girlfriends about, seeking safety in hollow laughter. Well, you've just told me you're not really bothered by them anymore. They're just an annoyance. Something that might happen weekly, but it's an annoyance. Because it's words on the internet. But, you know, let me give you an example of how this happens to everybody, Anita. For example, loads of people sent me this Mad Max Fury Road review by the Nostalgia Critic. I don't watch this guy because I find his voice to be insanely annoying. But because people had kept sending it to me, I thought, oh wow, this will be exciting. There must be something interesting in there. So I watched it. I was actually quite impressed with the effort they went to recreate the film, and I didn't have any particular beef with the way he'd portrayed Meninists or sort of feminist Tom Hardy fangirls. I thought it'd been, like, you know, equally misrepresentative of both groups. So I left this rather innocuous comment for people to see that they didn't need to send me this video. I don't see anything here to criticise apart from pointing out that Meninists don't actually exist, they're a parody, and that there's some heathen here saying that Thunderdome was the best Mad Max movie. Obviously, The Road Warrior is objectively the best one. Obviously. But yeah, I thought Fury Road was fine. I thought it was a bit overrated. I really don't have anything else to say. Now, I'm sure that we're both on the same page here, Anita, when I say that an innocuous comment like this doesn't deserve a torrent of abuse. But look at this. Of course the #1 maninist on the web would say there's no such thing. I mean, do I deserve to be criticised like that, Anita? I would have thought that if I was the #1 meninist, I'd want it to be a thing. But, you know, I don't think I deserve to be called an old ways are better hipster. Hipster? Of all things? What about this anonymous account? Hehe, you're dumb. Do you think that's okay, Anita? Is it okay? I even had PC bros accusing me of being a male feminist. Of all things. Of course the white nationalists turned up to project their fear of some black guy fucking their mothers. But if that's not enough, I got called an Alex Jones wannabe and bottom feeder of Anita Sarkeesian's fame, talking shit again. But they're not even addressing what I've said. But Mir had to spend time out of his life to say, my God, I can't stand you. And here he is again, geez. People actually follow this cunt. I got called the C word, Anita. The C word. Twice. And 15 people liked it. Do you know what that means? Do you know, Anita, what that means? It means I've been the victim of cyber violence. I need to go to the UN and complain that I've been the victim of cyber violence. And ask, nay, demand, that everyone's freedoms be restricted because some people on the internet sent me nasty words. The C word, Anita. Cunt. That's what I was called. Imagine the emotional distress. I deserve to be at the UN, just like you were last week with Zoe Quinn demanding exactly that.
One had mentioned it's not just what is legal and illegal, right? Harassment is threats of violence, but it's also the day-to-day grind of you're a liar, you suck, you know.
Yara Miharati, I do know, it's terrible when people say things to you on the internet that you don't agree with because you're a controversial figure who's come out and said things like, I don't know. How about there's no such thing as sexism against men? And when you find you can justify that, well, you can say almost anything about men, can't you? Like that it's not a coincidence it's always men and boys committing mass shootings. Not a coincidence at all. Or why are 98% of school shooters male? That's a great question, Anita. It's just like, why do blacks commit most of the crime, isn't it? I mean, just imagine if you had said there's no such thing as racism against Jews, and given whatever justification you like for it. How do you think it would come across? Do you think there would be a lot of Jews telling you that you suck?
Making all of these hate videos to attack us on a regular basis and the mobs that come from those hate videos, etc. And so, I've spent a lot of time thinking about online harassment and what we can do about it. And I think something that's really important to understand is that, we know this, but I think it's worth saying that sexism and misogyny did not start with the internet, right? It's been around for a long time, and feminists for decades have been challenging these male-dominated systems. So what we're seeing is that the internet is providing new ways to commit the same types of violence, right? And so understanding that this is a cultural, that we really need to see a big cultural shift in how we deal with this, and we can take note from activists that have been doing this work previously or have continued to do this work while acknowledging how technology is changing the face of current day sexism and misogyny. So creating a cultural shift, I think, takes a great number of approaches, and we've been hearing a lot about systemic change, and that makes me really happy because I think that that's really how we have to do this. And so one of those approaches is, I think that the online social media sites and the places in which we are engaging on these large platforms really need to step up and change the way that their systems operate. So it's not enough that they simply put Band-Aids on the problem areas, that they need to completely reimagine what their systems look like in order to build sites that actively deter online harassment, that make it harder to do this. We're not going to go and convince every single person who does horrible things online to stop doing those things, but we can make systems that actively deter that kind of behavior, which would make a huge impact on the lives of me and so many other people who are being harassed online. So what we have right now is women are forced to build a fortress around themselves with the measly tools that we have online. And so we are being punished for people harassing us and, yes, period. And I think that that's a really big problem. And so we need to really think about how we create this larger cultural shift, taking into consideration society at large, taking into consideration tech platforms, taking into consideration laws, so that people, like all people, can engage online and fully participate without fear of intimidation and violence.
Right. Well, I don't know exactly what you're proposing, Anita, but it sounds like you want dictatorial control of society. Every society and the internet and the laws of that society. I think the answer's probably going to be no. I'm really sorry. Unfortunately for controversial online personalities like us, because that's what we are, we're probably going to get called cunts quite a lot. So Sarkeesian and Quinn were at the UN to talk about cyber violence against women and girls, because cyber violence against men and boys is just fine. Now, I'm not going to take the time to go through it in this video, because it'd take way too long. And because I don't need to. I can just find a feminist online to tell me how bad this cyber harassment report is, and not because of the terrible levels of online violence that myself and many other victims have suffered. No. It's bad because it's crap. It's been written really, really poorly, and I do have to stress that Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn did not write this. The responsibility for this sloppy work falls on the UN Broadband Commission. Some of the issues with this report include, but are not limited to, duplicate or flat-out missing citations. When these are removed, only 64% of the citations remain, and 15% of the citations for the entire document are to the UN itself. While everyone can agree that this report is a pile of crap, there is something good that came out of it, and that was the desperate attempt to make cyber violence sound like a real and credible threat. This was obviously done using propaganda pictures, and they're amazing. Indian sisters told they will be repeatedly gang raped as punishment for their brother's crime launch appeal at Supreme Court. That sounds awful, but someone called this woman a nasty word in a comment section. Female genital mutilation embraced by Sunni Muslims as Shiite government looks the other way. Well, I mean, that is bad, but this poor young girl tweeted something inflammatory, and a bunch of people told her to shut up and stop being stupid. You can see why she's the one who's going to get priority. UN says 3,600 raped in the Congo by military and rebels over 4 years? I mean, that sounds really bad, but someone has just made an unfavourable video response to Anita Sarkeesian. Gamergate critic Sarah Nyberg claimed to be a paedophile? Oh shit. Seriously though, I think this can be best summed up by one of those pithy little cartoons, the sort that they were using for, oh I don't know, Black Lives Matter. I know that things are really, really bad in the Congo or in Iran or wherever women are actually being abused, but I think that cyber violence matters too, and we should care exactly equally about that at all times. Because all violence matters, real or cyber. Seriously though, how selfish and entitled do you have to be to think that your problems on Twitter or YouTube or wherever are more important than everything else I've listed here? They're more important than Saudi Arabia being chosen to head the UN Human Rights Panel. I mean, what the fuck is wrong with these people? But I tell you what, the Gadfather called it back in 2012. The United Nations is a morally bankrupt body. And by God, I can't find an argument against that.